All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our October PTSA meeting. Just get the slides to show properly. Can somebody confirm that you can see the slides? Yes, okay, excellent. All right. For tonight, we are gonna I'm gonna provide you with some updates on some things that have been going on. I'm gonna pass it over to Nikki to give some updates on the treasurer and membership updates. The Holiday Helping Hands program. We have a coffee chat coming up tomorrow. And then we'll turn it over to Mr. Doug Nelson to provide an update, a presentation on school safety and security. And then for a guest presentation, Jody Glau's going to be here to talk about, and Jody's on the screen right now, about helping underclassmen plan for college. Really excellent presentation for our underclassmen. So we did want to let everyone know about our next meeting in December. This is our annual alumni event. We're always pleased to have this great event where we bring our Wooten alumni back to have a chance to talk with parents and students and provide some insight on their choice of college, what is happening, what happened during the fall semester, how things are going. Providing some great insight. So what we'll have is it'll happen during our regular PTSA meeting, which will be on December 20th at 7 p.m. It's just the way the dates fell out, so it's a little bit late in the month, which is good for our students so that they're done with exams. It will be virtual, and we will have it like we are now on Zoom, and it's great because we can do breakout rooms, and we'll have multiple sessions, so you have a chance to meet with the different alums. And we will collect questions ahead of time, but also you'll have an opportunity to ask questions there as well. And most of our students are freshmen, but occasionally we'll get a sophomore that comes back and also wants to join us. So they enjoy, our Wooten graduates enjoy being part of this event. So we hope you can join us as well. I do want to plug that we are very much in need of post-prom volunteers. So prom is going to take place this year on May 20th, Saturday, May 20th. And the post-prom event happens immediately following prom. So it begins at 12 a.m. on May 21st. So very early on Sunday morning, ends at 5 a.m. And it's an event that we have to provide a safe environment for our students. So they have a really great place to come, have fun, and be in a safe environment. So in past years, it's taken place at Bowl America in Gaithersburg. We were thinking of having it there again. We do need parents of seniors or anyone else who'd be interested in joining to join us on the committee. We have to raise some funds, and we have an event to put together. So we hope that we'll get some folks to join us. You can email me at the email address on the screen, and you can also find that on the WootenPTSA.org website. So last Wednesday, was the Board of Education public hearing for the capital improvement program. That is the hearing regarding facilities for Montgomery County Public Schools. And we had our students testify at the hearing. We had all 14 student slots were filled with Wooten students. I could not have been more proud of them. They gave very passionate and just excellent testimony, very powerful testimony to the Board of Education. The board members did respond with good questions and of the MCPS staff that were there. And we do hope that maybe it makes an impact on them to accelerate the completion date for the Wooten renovation project, which got pushed to 2029. And by the way, we did fill the hearing hall. The hearing room was filled with Wooten parents and students. And it was really a Wooten cluster night. Majority of the testimony that night was about Wooten cluster schools. So we made an impression. The next meeting that will be coming up, the next hearing is going to be before the Montgomery County Council. That's going to take place in early January. Again, our students are planning on testifying, and we hope to again get parents and students to come out and fill the hearing room and let the council know how important it is that we accelerate and not delay our renovation. And if you're interested, just stay tuned. I'll be providing more information in the newsletter once we do have a date for the hearing. And now I'm going to turn it over to Nikki for the membership update.
Hi, everybody. So just a quick update that you should have received your directory already if you purchased a membership. They were delivered to students, homeroom teachers. There were a handful that I mailed when students didn't have a homeroom teacher. I think there are some kids who were in the virtual academy. But if for some reason you purchased a membership and you have not gotten your directory, please send me an email. We do have about 30 directories left. So if you missed out and you would still like to have a physical directory, you can still purchase a membership and receive one. You can go to the next slide. There we go. So I wanted to give an update on the Holiday Helping Hands program. I am sure that you have seen the very many emails that I've been sending out. The program is well underway. We have 29 families now with 71 children. So that's more than last year. Just today, we got 8 new families. We expect that number is going to stop soon. Our soft deadline was last week for applications. So usually we trickle down from here and really focused on getting the families we have finished. So we've had a lot of great donations, but we definitely still need more. We need grocery store gift cards. It's our goal to give each family a $200 grocery store gift card. Primarily, we look to have those from Giant, Safeway, or Harris Teeter. You can also shop from a child's Target or Amazon registry. So if you go on the website, which is here on the screen here, the link, what you'll see is that for each family, we've numbered them. So right now we have families 1 through 29. And then depending on how many children are in the family, the children are lettered A, B, C, D, E. And so you'll be able to see how old the child is, their gender, and what school. You'll be able to see what school they attend or what school their sibling attends. So sometimes, especially with Lakewood and Dufief, because we have a lot of special needs children at those schools, their siblings may not necessarily go to school in the cluster. But, out of an abundance of fairness, we want to provide gifts not just to the one child in the district, but also to their siblings. So occasionally we do have children outside of the cluster, but there's always at least one child in the family within the cluster. But if you're too busy, if the thought of going to buy a gift card or shopping from a registry is overwhelming, which is understandable, there's a lot going on this time of year, you can also send the money to myself and Jen Eisenfeld, who run the program. We will shop for you. So if you go to the website, all the information is there about how to send money via Zelle, via Venmo, via PayPal. You can also give us a Target gift card or an Amazon gift card, and we can use those to shop from those registries for you. Whatever makes you the most comfortable. And you can always reach out to us at the email on the screen, holiday@tswootenhs.org. Happy to answer any questions you might have. We do have a list of frequently asked questions on the website. I'm going to continue to send out those update emails so that you can see the progress, see if we still need help. What I try to do in those progress emails is list how many items are left on the registries. I check those the night before the email goes out, so you can kind of see, like, does this kid only have 1 item left, or has no one purchased anything and all of their items are left? So just so you kind of have that insight. Again, please reach out to us with questions. Lots of the questions should be answered on the website. I know that if you haven't looked at it before, maybe it's a little overwhelming, but we try to give you as much information as possible so that you can navigate it on your own. So anyways, that's the Holiday Helping Hands program update. And again, we really hope that you can help support us. And just know too, we are working really hard to spread the word throughout all of the other cluster schools, working with the principals at those schools and the PTAs at those schools to also get this message out to the families at those schools as well. And then the last thing that I had is just a reminder that the coffee chat, which is normally on Fridays following this meeting, is actually going to be tomorrow at 9 a.m. As always, just like with this meeting, that event will be recorded. It'll be on our YouTube channel. I've gotten a few questions in advance already. If you can send those by tonight, if you're going to have additional questions for Mr. Nelson, that's helpful. But I can even take them up until the time of the chat and send those to him. And that way, if you can't make the chat, if you can't be there to ask the question yourself, we will make sure your question gets asked, and we will make sure you have access to the recording. And so from here, I am going to actually turn it over to Mr. Nelson so that he can give you a school safety and security presentation.
Thank you so much, Nikki and Brian. Just a little note, Nikki, I just made my donation to Wooten Helping Hands, and it was wildly easy to do. So I hope to encourage everybody. That Venmo option was really convenient. So hopefully we'll collect a lot to support our families in the community. So thank you. Just a couple of notes before we step into this update. The weather has certainly changed. I heard from my family in Pennsylvania, it's snowing for them. So with that change in weather, of course, the holiday season is upon us. And I just wanted to wish everybody in the Wooten community a really safe and wonderful Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is my personal favorite holiday. And so I get very excited just to spend time with those that I love. So I hope that you all have a very special Thanksgiving holiday and that break that's coming up. I also wanted to just give a little bit of a plug. In my background, I was a theater director before I left the classroom to move into administration. So the fall play is upon us. And if you are eager to see our talented students on stage, just a reminder that the play opens this weekend and there's plenty of times to come and see it. So there are evening and matinee shows basically all throughout the weekend. So be sure to check out those show times and come by to see the wonderful production of Clue. I've been by to see the stage. It looks amazing. So hopefully you'll be out to see those performances. So tonight's presentation centers around safety and security at schools. And just to give a little context to the presentation, one thing that I have learned being an administrator for a number of years, this topic is one that you really cannot speak to enough. So schools annually train and prepare for school safety and security responses. But when it comes to working with students and with parents, an opportunity to review this information is particularly important. One thing that we say to our staff is oftentimes when it comes to a school's response to an emergency situation, it is not a matter of if we go into an emergency response, it's a matter of when we go into emergency response. A school as large as ours, things will happen and the school needs to respond based upon the circumstances that are before you. And most oftentimes we're moving into a lower level response that just controls what's right in front of us. But we have a number of responses that we take. And my purpose really this evening is to share that information with you to make sure that you are more informed about what those responses are and about how we prepare your students and our staff to respond. A little bit about questions because we have a pretty packed agenda tonight. And I'm for this presentation for 20 minutes. You're likely to have questions as we move through the content of this presentation. I just wanted to preview by saying in the November 7th community message, there's a frequently asked questions document in that community update. So if you have a question, I'm going to request first that you check out that FAQs document in the community update, see if that provides an answer to your question. Then, and if you still need further information, please reach out to me and I could either answer that question or connect you with our amazing security team at Wooten High School, because we will move this presentation right on to the next part of the agenda this evening. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into this. To begin, all schools, including Wooten High School, annually, we prepare by going through 6 specific drills that we must implement every year. And some drills we practice more than once, but at a minimum, all of these are practiced at least once. And they include lockdown evacuation, reverse evacuation, shelter in place, drop, cover, hold. This also is a form of shelter, severe weather. And so we're going to talk through all of those this evening. If I could have the next slide, please. We're going to begin with fire evacuations. The vast majority of schools have the new up-to-date fire alarm systems, meaning we have to do 5 specific drills. 2 of those have been completed so far this year at Wootton, so we will have 3 more to complete throughout the year. In the fire evacuation, obviously, the goal is to evacuate the building because of danger and make sure we get to safe locations as soon as we can. And so we will practice those regularly throughout the year. Next slide, please. For our fire evacuation, the details that you really need to know about this evacuation is when it happens, the fire alarms will go off. That is our cue to leave. Every staff member in every classroom has a specific emergency folder that has necessary information that we need staff to take when we are evacuating for a fire emergency. Teachers and staff are then reminding our students to move expeditiously, quickly, and quietly out of the building to specific identified locations. Every classroom has a specific area on campus that you evacuate to. You leave the building through the nearest exit unless that exit is blocked. That might be where the fire emergency is. So we teach, sometimes you have to pivot and go a different direction, but you leave as quickly as you can. Classes must be at least 50 feet away from the building and their specific holding locations. Attendance is then taken. There's an area leader at each spot on campus who then collects that attendance, reports any discrepancies, and then we kind of move forward with holding until that fire emergency is taken care of. So you wait for further instructions. Next slide. Similar to a fire emergency, we have directed evacuations. They function very similarly to a fire evacuation, except you don't have a fire alarm. When might we go through directed evacuation? If you have a bomb threat, if there's a package on campus and you don't know what that is, and you need to move individuals away from that area to check it out. Sometimes it's because there's a smell in a particular part of the school and we're just not sure where it is, but we're gonna err on being safe. And so we move individuals out of the school. So there are a number of reasons why you might do a directed evacuation. This happens when an all call tells individuals over the PA in order to evacuate the building. One thing that does not happen like a fire drill is we do not all just go to one holding area, let's say like the entire school to a stadium. We do not do that. We spread out over campus, similar to a fire evacuation, and then we move through our process from there. Again, emergency folders are taken. You will exit through designated exit areas. If we know one of them is close to the issue, we will make it clear in the announcement if there's a part of the school that you are to avoid. We must go 300 feet away from the school building when we are doing a directed evacuation. Attendance, again, is taken and you wait for further instructions, which is most oftentimes from the fire department as they are coming to assess, generally with a directed evacuation, what is our concern at the school. Next slide, please. Reverse evacuation. This takes place, so if there is a need for individuals inside the school building to leave the school building, it's also possible that being outside of the school building, the issue might be there, hence you need to come into the building. And that is why we do a reverse evacuation. It brings individuals from outside inside. Why might we do that? You know that sometimes PE is outdoors if the weather's conducive and they have a particular unit, let's say on the tennis courts, and then we find out there is a hazmat spill and the wind is blowing. So that's an example when we would need to bring students in with their teachers and we might need to control airflow in and out of the building. So reverse evacuation generally happens for smaller numbers of individuals outside the building and they are brought in. It is possible you need to come in because the weather is unsafe, hence we move into a safe weather response and you would go into the holding areas for that response. Again, attendance is taken, you wait for further instructions while we manage the reverse evacuation and bringing individuals inside. Next slide. Severe weather shelter. This happens if we know that there is severe weather in the area and based on what we see with the forecast, it's coming in our general area. And so we of course have great forecasting, but we need to respond to that if it's close to Wootton, and things change based on the time of the day, whether it is arrival or dismissal or whether school is fully in session. So when you take students into weather-safe holding areas, which are in internal spaces throughout the school building, and they are labeled so that you know where to go. Teachers escort their classes into those holding areas. Students get down on the ground. They cover up in case there's an actual weather event that hits the school and things might fall, and they just hold there. Emergency folders are taken. Relocatable classrooms need to come inside. You would avoid areas with open spaces. Great example in Wootton to share is you would want individuals out of the commons. Lots of windows, high ceilings. You go into a more contained, safer area. Take attendance once we're through the response and wait for further instructions. Next slide, please. Shelter in place. This term really exists for when a school needs to heighten some type of control in the building that is beyond normal function. And these happen somewhat regularly, and then there's varying degrees. So shelter in places may happen, and you might not know that we even had to go into a shelter, but sometimes they're larger and more significant, and then students would be aware, or parents would be finding out about that. But shelter really means we need to have heightened awareness and control the building a little further. Oftentimes, exterior doors are locked and further controlled more than they normally are. Oftentimes, attendants are taken from teachers so that we know exactly where students are. We might control students moving in and out of classrooms, or you might have an escort if you are moving around the building. It all depends upon the circumstances. What oftentimes does happen with a shelter in place is you continue classroom instruction. We oftentimes limit movement in the building for adults and students alike. Announcements will oftentimes be leading the response throughout the building and not general bells. We take attendance regularly during shelters, and we have a way of reporting that attendance that is a bit different than the way attendance is normally taken through Synergy, and instructions happen often. I'm going to give an example of a very low level shelter that happens and students might not notice. If we have the ambulance arriving to get someone from the health room, let's say it's a student who has a response to a nut allergy, we will put a shelter into a specific part of the school and just control 2 or 3 hallways to allow those that are responding to the school, the paramedics, to move unimpeded within our hallways. This takes about 10 minutes generally, and then we're out of shelter. But sometimes they can be more significant if we have like a spill, or let's say that there is an emergency at another school and we need to control our campus, we might go into a more significant shelter in order to respond to that. Next slide, please. Drop, cover, hold, shelter. This is the response if we were ever to respond to an earthquake. So basically what we do in the classroom or wherever you are, you get down on the ground, you cover and you hold until the shaking stops. Before, there used to be guidance about going to a doorway. You do not go to a doorway any longer. You stay right where you are. And if you are outside, individuals outside during this response, they do not move into the building. They stay outside and try to avoid large things that might fall over. So we practice this once a year. Next slide. We do make sure that individuals, students and staff alike, know how to call. If we have a legitimate emergency, we want individuals to know you call 911 regardless, and err on the side of no, question that. Call 911. We would rather have the response if it is an actual emergency. We also have a way to reach out specifically for emergency circumstances that are not as significant as 911. And so you'll see that number here. Just want you to know the different phone numbers we might use to receive a response from emergency staff. Next slide. So lockdown, and just a little context to this presentation. Oftentimes, if schools go through an actual emergency response, it is debriefed through MCPS, and schools are asked to follow up based upon another school's experience. So you might be aware that earlier, another MCPS high school had a lockdown response and lessons were learned. Part of the reason to present tonight is to make sure parents know that we are collectively making sure information gets out to all of our school communities based on that response. And since that was a lockdown, here are some things that I would like for you to know about what we do to prepare for lockdown responses. Lockdown happens if there is an imminent threat and danger in the building. And it takes place as quickly as you can. You announce a lockdown through the all call, and everyone must immediately respond. You are trying to avoid an imminent threat by disappearing or making it seem like you are no longer there. What happens is staff would immediately open doors, do a quick sweep or scan. If someone's right outside, you bring them in your class and then you lock it down. Students and staff inside the building, but outside a classroom or office, if you get locked out, we go through the process of going to whatever securable location or place that you can hide, you should go there. Sometimes the closest place is a bathroom that doesn't fully lock down, but that is a good place to hide in many cases. So wherever you can go to make sure you are not visible is the place where anyone in the building should go to make sure that they disappear. Students and staff outside the building, what we train to do is to go away from the school, far enough away that you can no longer see it, but we do not necessarily communicate where that location is because we want to kind of control that here at the school. So you want to get away from the building so you can no longer see it in an identified location that we know about. We do lock and secure all our doors. We cover blinds on those interior windows on classroom doors, turn off lights, silence all electronics. We instruct and teach how to get into a safe corner. So if you imagine walking into a classroom, generally it is that first corner to your left or your right that is opposite the classroom window, but it would be the corner that is hardest to see in if someone was trying to see in that classroom window. And so you pick that corner, you group up and you kind of hide and stay down in that corner. You remain silent, ignore alarms and bells, and you just wait until individuals kind of come in and control the situation and release everyone from it. No attendance is taken during that time. You await further instructions. Next slide, please. There's a lockdown checklist. So these are the things that individuals go through. It basically says, these are the things you need to do in order to go into that lockdown. Next slide. Some lockdown and considerations. If you're inside the building, but outside a classroom or an office where the lockdown is called, you have to simply make a decision to go into a securable location, wherever that might be. You might have to move through a hallway. You might have to run to a particular location, but you have to move in a lockdown to find where you can secure and lock down. Next slide. If you are outside the building, you have to move to that predetermined safe location, which is far enough away from the building you can no longer see it. Next slide. And we teach the idea of situational awareness, which is you have to use your senses to figure out to the best of your ability what is happening around you. We're about to talk through lockdown with options. The way that this works really requires someone to use situational awareness. You have to be mindful of what's around you and what might seem out of place. You have to kind of look at your actions and determine, does this make the most sense based on what I see or hear in front of me? Should I take an action or not? Be aware, stay aware is kind of what we work with when we teach situational awareness. And if you become more aware and you are better able to make a choice in that decision, let's say we go into immediate lockdown and it's very clear there's an emergency response taking place in your building, but you don't hear it. You realize it's far away from you. It might make sense to go through lockdown with option moves that we're going to talk about right now. Next slide. So what do we mean by that? So sometimes in lockdown with options, it makes sense that you have to go through certain moves. It might make sense that you have to avoid. To avoid means you flee, you run out of the building, you get away, and it's very clear that you can. And oftentimes, teachers, it makes a lot of sense. You're near one of those fire exit doors, so you simply just go. Sometimes you deny, which means you're barricading, you're putting things in front of your door. It makes sense that you are just going to stack as much in front of that door that it would be hard to get through if someone tried to. And we talk through that through scenarios that we practice. Last resort is always defend, which is a concept that we teach. In the end, you might have to defend for yourself to the best of your ability, according to what is right in front of you, and it might be something that you have to do to stay alive. Next slide. If we were to go into a significant emergency response, it is very likely that we might go into a parent reunification process. What I want parents to know about that is there's information prepared to move us into that response. We have maps, we have locations that we would be sharing with you where we need you to come to pick up your child. It is the lower gym for Wootton High School. But we would be announcing that, and that's part of the flow of information that would start to come out to you. You will see that there will be signage that goes out so you know where to collect your child. You will need to come with certain information. The process here is to be as efficient as possible while also making sure that we do effective verification before students are kind of let go from that emergency response. There is a sign-in process. You will need to identify yourself. We have to match to the emergency information that is provided to the school. There are specific locations. We have runners. We have a system in which we get students and bring them down to reconnect with parents, so on and so forth. So if we were to ever to go into parent-child reunification, things for Wootton parents to know is the communication that would come from the school. The details of that are particularly important to pay attention to, because they will tell you specific details that you need to know and understand when you come to collect your child. And on this note, because this is very close to the last one we are going to present, staff have been trained on this, but along with parent reunification, MCPS has shared with schools new protocols for the flow of information if we were to ever go into a significant emergency response. Let me use lockdown as an example. Lockdown, generally, we would be controlling the school, and when we got information out to the parents, it might be a really long time based on that emergency response, but things like that now have shifted. And there are messages that both the school and central office, as we work with likely our police partners to manage a major response, that are in place to start getting information out to parents in a more timely manner. The reason why this is important, we do want you to hear from us. Oftentimes, information starts to go out through social media or through text that is not always the most accurate or trustworthy information. And so we want to make sure the communication lines are open so you know with some regularity, information is coming from either the school or central office on behalf of Wootton High School. And so we have now messages and protocol structure in place to get information out to that school community as soon as it is safe to do so. And so we want parents and guardians, caregivers to know, be on the lookout for those messages to start to flow. Some of them might be similar information over and over again, but the regularity of the communication and that it continues to be released to the Wootton community should be reassuring that we are getting that information out to you. And I want you to know that new structure is in place. Okay, so that is my presentation. Again, if you have questions, I recommend you start with the November 7th community update. There's an FAQ sheet, start there. And if there's anything that I can help you with further after that, please reach out to me. We'll make sure that we get you an answer. Brian, you might still be on mute.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nelson, for the excellent presentation. This is very helpful to understand how the school safety information works and what our students have to go through to practice. So next we have on our agenda, we have Jody, who's going to join us to start the presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Jody now.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Mr. Nelson. I appreciate everybody for joining me today. I am going to share my screen because I have a presentation today about helping underclassmen plan for college that I hope will be very helpful to many of you. So let me pull it up and get that started. And we'll go from the beginning. So I am going to allow time at the end for questions and answers. So go ahead and add any questions you want in the chat, and hopefully I'll be able to get to them. And I'll leave about 10 minutes at the end. So hi, my name is Jody Glau, and I'm the president of Custom College Consulting. I help students and their families navigate the often confusing college planning process. And a lot of times families are really interested in how to get their underclassmen prepared. And Brian thought it would be a great time for me to address those families. I mean, I have 2 students of my own who graduated from Wooten. They have now both graduated from college, so it's hard to believe that it was that long ago. And I'm very familiar with Wooten, and I know that Wooten has a lot of resources for you to put your students in a really good position as far as building their student profiles. So, where do you start? Just so you know, according to the U.S. Department of Education, students should begin the process of planning for college before they even start high school. So I don't know if your blood pressure just went up. I don't want you to worry about that. I also don't expect any 8th graders to go into high school knowing exactly what school they want to attend, what they want to major in, how they're going to get there. That's not what we are talking about in regards to planning for college. Okay, so we're talking about planning to know what to do and starting early with developing interests and curriculum and their student profiles. So that's where we're going to begin. So for those of you who haven't seen this, this is the majority of you have. This is your graduation requirements for MCPS. So if you're, I think that I did the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade on here, if you take a look. And the first thing that's really important is to familiarize yourself with the required courses and graduation requirements for your high school in Wooten in this case. Obviously, I know there's been a couple of changes, and you can even see them on here, how they look a little bit different. I know that health is a year-long requirement now, and there's some other other academic changes. So that's really the first thing that you want to take into account before you decide other aspects of helping your students build their curriculum. So first, it's important to know the difference between high school requirements and college requirements. So I put in here what the core classes are first. So when college is considered core classes, they are talking about English, math, sciences, and social studies, okay? And as you can see here, English and math are 4 years, and science 3 to 4 years, and social studies 3 to 4 years. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. So, for example, some colleges might require that you studied a fine art or taken 4 years of a foreign language. Well, we know that, and we're going to talk about foreign language a little bit more on the next slide, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that is what Wooten and MCPS requires. So they're looking for students to have a good, solid foundation of learning that they're going to build upon in college. And it really also depends what type of college your student is interested in attending in order to figure out where your student should build their curriculum. So the first thing to do is to choose the right elective classes by exploring interests, researching course requirements for colleges and universities. So if a student is interested in STEM versus the liberal arts, there might be some different requirements. And of course, talk to your school counselors or a college admissions professional like myself to find out what you should be preparing for before you get to college. So let's start with English. Most schools require 4 years of English. Wooten, of course, is one of them. So the decision obviously then becomes what level of English that a student should take, but we're going to talk a little bit more about rigor in a little bit later in the presentation. So just hold on for a minute. So as far as math goes, most schools again want to see 4 years, but the types of math differ depending on a student's potential major. Taking Algebra 1 and geometry and even Algebra 2 earlier gives a student a good foundation for college entrance exams like the SATs and ACTs. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to get through calculus and stats. But if you're going to major in engineering or something like that, that's something that you might want to add to your schedule maybe later on as a junior or a senior. So Science, for example, MCPS requires 3 credits, but most selective and highly selective institutions want to see 4 credits or 4 years of a lab science. What I mean by a lab science is obviously you have biology, chemistry, and physics, but you could also do physiology, you can do astronomy, you can do forensics. That was my students. That was my boys' personal favorites. So all of those are physical sciences. So 4 years is really what colleges want to see. And the same thing goes for social studies. MCPS requires only 3 years, including American history, world history, and NSL. But social studies helps provide students an understanding of local and world events, and often includes courses such as economics and psychology. So those actually fall under social studies. So even if you have a student who's interested in business, economics would fulfill that 4th requirement. Okay, so let's move on to electives. So it's important to understand, it's important, first of all, of course, to build electives into your student schedule. And keep in mind that while Wooten requires all students to take PE, health, technology, and an arts credit, not all schools do. So I encourage my students who don't even go to an MCPS school to build that into their studies. But besides the requirements, it is okay if a student wants to take PE for 4 years or arts for 4 years. So when deciding what other electives to consider, you want to make sure that your student is pursuing their passions. Taking a class in an area that they enjoy can add fun to high school and also reduce their stress. So high school electives that a student genuinely loves can also lead to scholarship opportunities and more pursuits in college. So if your school doesn't necessarily offer a specific elective that you're looking for, you can look at other high schools in the MCPS area, as well as local community college like MC, and a lot of them offer online elective courses. Electives also help maintain balance. Handling 4 or 5 core credits each semester doesn't leave a lot of room and a lot of time for extracurriculars after school. So you want to consider electives that maybe don't require so much after school commitments. And it also signals a willingness to try something new that maybe you haven't tried before, like photography or computers or even an element of PE that's interesting to you. And they also can enhance a student's application. One way to use electives is to explore potential majors. I know that Wooten has a great law class. Of course, as I said, there's economics and technology, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the signature programs as well. And it's definitely seeing that there's a pattern on your transcript can make a student's application stand out and more appealing in the panel. So I do want to quickly talk about foreign language. So when you're talking about foreign language, and I know that MCPS requires 2 years, and I would say that that is one thing that I really encourage a lot of my students to focus on is foreign language, because not only does it show a commitment to learning more about another culture and another language, but as our world is growing smaller and smaller, it helps with career opportunities. And students, I have also even considered going to college outside of the United States and really honing in on those languages. So let's talk a little bit about course rigor. So first of all, why is rigor so important? Colleges might not be impressed with the bare minimum. So the average will not wow them, whereas if it comes to academic rigor, it will. You want to push yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone where you're still able to accomplish good grades. So college coursework, remember, is going to be more difficult than an average high school class. So the more demanding of a class that you might do in college, you're proving how well you might be able to handle it on the college level. So this isn't actually a problem I find with a lot of my MCPS students, but I'm often asked this from the majority of my parents. Is it better to have higher rigor or a higher GPA? And it really depends. Of course, I'm going to say the answer is usually both, but a more realistic answer is there needs to be a balance of the two. Many students think that the GPA is the single most important factor, along with maybe the SATs and the ACTs, that's going to determine their acceptances to college. While, of course, a GPA is important and rigor is too, colleges are also going to take into account the types of classes that a student is doing. So a balance of doing a couple of rigorous AP courses is absolute, or IB classes, if you're in an IB school, is fine, is more than adequate. I know that I can't even remember how many AP classes that Wooten offers, but you shouldn't expect your student to take every single AP class that is out there. That is not the purpose of AP, and they should really only pursue AP classes where they have a strength in that subject matter. Okay, moving on. Oh, I already said that. Okay, so what kinds of classes are considered rigorous? So of course the AP and IB, but also honors is obviously above grade level. And I know that there are a few classes where there are no grade level, but honors, it's still considered very rigorous to have an honors class. And of course, grade level is considered pretty much on par. And then of course, there's dual enrollment. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with dual enrollment, but that's an opportunity that many students have to take college level courses at Montgomery College, and a lot of students will take that their senior year. So it often translates into college credit upon completion. So then not only are you showing academic rigor, but you're also helping your overall credit hour requirement. So in the long run, it's kind of a win-win for everybody. The best people to ask, of course, are the high school counselors. They're the pros at deciding what are the best classes that show rigor at your high school. And so there are some pros or cons to that. So thinking about putting rigor in your schedule, you want to make sure that, like I said before, it is balanced and that you're not loading up on too many APs, you're not loading up on all sciences, that you're allowing to have, some classes that aren't going to have so much homework that you're up until 2 o'clock in the morning. Your student is up till 2 o'clock in the morning trying just to stay afloat. So ideally, I always say try to aim to 2 or 3 AP or IB or dual enrollments throughout the year, and spreading out challenges will make them more manageable. And that's how much is too much. So discuss finding the right rigor for your student. Just because the school offers 7 AP classes doesn't mean that the student should take them. Remember, mental health is critical. So we're very lucky that Wooten offers some of the best signature programs in the county, and many high schools do that. So let me just throw a couple up there that maybe some of you have heard of, or maybe some of your students are a part of. So a number of high schools have created these signature programs that integrate a special focus or distinguishing theme with skills, concepts, and instructional strategies of a school's curriculum. The theme or focus is the vehicle for teaching traditional school curriculum in an interesting and challenging way based on a student's particular interests. As we know, STARS is a 4-year program for motivated students in the STEM fields, and the humanities and arts are for students who are passionate about humanities and arts. And AOIT, of course, is a program that introduces students to a broad career opportunities in the digital workforce. We talked a little bit about dual enrollment already. There is another program that's kind of along the same lines as dual enrollment, and that's early college. Early college was introduced a few years ago, and this is a partnership between MCPS and other school systems, of course, and local community colleges. In our case, it is Montgomery College. Early college students can earn up to 30 credits and an associate degree by the time they graduate high school. So they will be getting an associate's degree and a high school degree at the same time. They will not be transferring into a college. They are just earning an associate degree. So I have very mixed feelings about that. I've had many students do early college. I've had students start early college and then just move into dual enrollment. And I'd be happy to take questions about that later. But you should definitely have your students talk to the counselors because they know your students best. Okay, and here's my world language slide. Sorry about that, it's just in the wrong place. Let's talk a little bit about extracurriculars. So we know that Wooten has some of the best extracurriculars out there, and this is another way for students to build their student profile. So it's important for them to think beyond the grades. Participating in a few extracurricular activities like sports, clubs, even a part-time job can help foster new interests and develop more about themselves. In fact, admissions committees often review extra academic activities listed on the college application to help decide if they're going to offer admission. In fact, I have many students who participated in the arts who had no intention of even going into the arts, and they are offered specific scholarships just because they see a significant interest in extracurriculars. So high school is a time to try new things and develop these skills that are going to inevitably develop passions within your students. So again, while grades and test scores are important, colleges want to see a well-rounded student. They don't want to see a student who is so focused on just one thing. So take the skills outside of the classroom so that they can help themselves stand out. So what types of extracurriculars are best for your student? It really depends on your student. So match their passions and their interests. Rather than joining like 5 to 10 different clubs that maybe are prestigious, find ones that spark interest in your student. Wooten has a great list of all of the clubs on their website and how to get in touch with somebody to find out what they can participate in. So even if a student missed the club fair, there are ways that they can join an extracurricular. After school activities offer a fun way to explore interests and develop friendships. This may be one reason why more than 80% of adolescents 12 to 17 take part in at least one extracurricular activity. So here are some of the school-sponsored activities. Think of these as a way to complement your regular classroom study. So if you like a specific subject or a class, the chances are that they're going to have a related program. For example, joining the school newspaper if you like to write, and if you're really good at English. If you're really good at math, why not join the math club or the math leagues? If you admissions officers like to see that school-sponsored activities on applications because they know that there is a field beyond. So you'll see that there is a few of them where there's sports teams, of course, the arts, newspaper and yearbook, student government, special interests, such as drama, chess club, BSU, JSU, competitive academics like the Mathlete Science Bowl and the academic decathlon. All right, let's talk a little bit about independent activities. Sometimes when I work with students, they say, I don't have any extracurricular activities. And I say, oh, well, what do you do after school? And they say, I'm too busy for extracurriculars because I have dance 4 days a week, and then I take karate on the weekends. I also have a part-time job and I babysit. And I'm like, those are extracurricular activities. They're just not school-sponsored extracurricular activities. They're independent activities. And as you look through some of them on there, just think about that these, again, are going to show a commitment to a passion and creativity. Again, colleges like to see the willingness to learn. After all, learning is what college is all about. So showing admissions committees that you're curious and willing to work hard for what you want is a great way to stand out to have your application stand out. Now I want to talk about something that's truly near and dear to my heart, which is community service. As a college advisor, I build community service into my program. And as you know, MCPS requires 75 SSL hours. And if a student earns 240 plus hours, they earn a certificate of meritorious service. And of course, that purple tassel, which is really important, but community service really means much, much more. I applaud MCPS for incorporating SSL hours, but unfortunately, a lot of times when student reaches that 75 or 240 mark, that's it, they're done. And I really encourage families to put community service into a student's lives as a component, show by doing, and introduce them as a way to get involved in the community, give back to the community. It's a way that students can learn adulting skills without having a part-time job, to give, again, like I said, to give back to the community, to show to learn what it's like to be in a workplace and to help others less fortunate than themselves. So for my students, I encourage community service, at least an ongoing project that they attend 4 times a month, as long as they're a part of my program. What are some of the benefits of community service? Well, the first one is, believe it or not, it increases self-esteem. So, oops, sorry about that. Going back. Acts of philanthropy actually lead to a greater feel of self-worth because helping others is fun. Also, it helps students gain empathy for others. Volunteering helps teens see that not everyone's life is like their own. So helping others gives them a different perspective and become more empathetic in their daily lives. It also builds long-term generosity. Getting involved in philanthropic causes early in life can set up a team for generosity later in life. People who volunteer when they're young are more likely to volunteer when they're older and to donate to nonprofits and causes at the same time. And also, students who perform community service are also known to earn better grades. Volunteering can also help students academically, and there's a positive correlation here. And those who are involved in community service will gain skills necessary in the job market, such as leadership, communication, skills, dependability, time management, and decision-making. And ultimately, they will become a stronger college applicant. Having volunteer experience looks great on a college resume. Of course, that is not why I want students to do it and not why they should want to do it. Colleges often look for the well-rounded applicants, and they are more likely to hire people who volunteer. It also helps and is a key factor in securing college scholarships. Many organizations offer scholarships to students who demonstrate community involvement and leadership throughout high school. The scholarship awards are meant to appreciate and encourage students to give back to their community and make it a better place. So the more hours your students commit to volunteering, the higher chances they are of earning one of these amazing opportunities. So make sure you keep track of volunteering hours. You can reference them whenever you're applying on a scholarship, or if you're writing there's always an essay about giving back to the community, and your students will be able to be specific in how much time that they've spent volunteering. So community service naturally progresses into paid experience. So there's a lot of pros and cons, of course, about high schoolers getting a job, but we're going to focus on the benefits here. Really, the primary drawbacks are the time commitment, and especially with the shortage right now of workers, while it's easier for students to get a job, many supervisors are requiring that they put in more and more hours. So that's really a challenge. But the benefits are that, of course, the student learns important life skills. High school students who work learn time management skills, as well as organization. They develop communication and work as a team. They develop a work history that can take those skills with them into their adulting world. A lot of my students, well, my students all create a resume when they work with me, and that helps them in getting high school jobs. But I've had students that have graduated and come back to me several years after college and said, you know, I'm still using the foundational resume that we worked together on when I was a sophomore and you're in preparing for college. So it's great to have all these jobs just build and build onto a student's resume. Working teaches kids responsibility and accountability, and they also learn to take initiative, function independently while keeping commitment. Having their own money provides them opportunities to have a tangible reward for their effort. From earning to spending to saving, they'll learn important lessons about money management. And then, of course, there's always a possibility if during the school year, working is just not going to fit into their schedule. A summer job is always a great opportunity. I always say, give a kid a lifeguard job or a counseling job. It's the hardest job they'll ever love. And while we're on summer employment, let's talk about other summer opportunities that your students can start preparing for now before they even breach the college application planning process. So summer opportunities are a great way for them to explore other things that they're interested in. So internships, for example, will give students a chance to see something that maybe in the field that they're interested in. So if they're interested in pre-med, maybe even shadowing at a doctor's office or working at a front desk, they'll get a chance to see what professionals in their chosen field actually do on a day-to-day basis, and if that's something that they want to pursue. And then a summer job, which we talked to already, and volunteer work. Of course, I think that that's great, and you can build in a summer job and volunteer work at the same time. Balancing the two is really important because you want to be able to show that you can have that you can do both. So of course there's summer classes. If I know that MCPS allows students to replace grades if they got, you know, a grade that they didn't expect or they weren't able to finish because of illness. So that's a great time to take that. But also there's summer enrichment classes that I encourage students to take if they're really interested in taking a science class that they just don't have room for in their schedule. Go ahead and take it in the summer. There are also these summer enrichment programs where students can take classes at colleges to see what a college life might be like. So they actually live in the dorms, they eat in the dining halls. Some of them can even earn college credit. So oftentimes you should, if a student's interested in a specific major, then you look at a program. But if a student is interested even in a college, perhaps that college has a summer program that your student can attend to see if that could be the right fit for them. So it's a really good way to kind of test the waters before they go into the college research process. So let's talk a little bit more about these enrichment programs. So again, it allows students to explore their interests and develop new skills and get hands-on experience that a high school classroom may not offer. So a lot of times students are really, you know, in a classroom, they're busy taking notes and they're really focusing on the books and the assignments at hand. But hands-on tactile experiences are really a way that a lot of our students learn best. And this is a way to really get them excited, and it can translate into the classroom later. They also can meet other students with similar interests. So if they're interested in political science and they do a political science program, and they meet other students with that are as equally as passionate about social justice or something like that, then they've met a friend for life. Like I said, it also gives them a taste for college, trying college classes, and many of them you can even earn college credit if available, but it is not the sole purpose of a college enrichment program. So I've gotten a lot of questions this year, more than ever, about college admission testing. And I understand why, because there are so many schools that are test optional. And should my student even take pre-college testing? I don't really know where to move forward. So I thought the best way to organize this section was to kind of create a Q&A section of its own. So I'm going to put some questions up there and then answer them for you. But if I don't answer it to your liking, go ahead and throw it up in the chat. That's a terrible thing to say. Go ahead and add it to the chat and I'll answer you. So let's start with the first question. How important are scores to college? Well, this is going to vary from college to college, and it really depends on a college's unique approach to reviewing scores and how they use them. And so I always say you should always go and look on Naviance, and you can look at a school's profile on their website to determine how important scores are and if they should even incorporate them into their profile. And we're going to talk about to submit or not to submit in a minute. Should I even take a college admissions test? Honestly, it is best practices to keep your options open and take and study for, not just take, a college admissions test for college entry. Even if you are applying to test optional schools, again, it's better to take them and have those scores available in case you'll need them. Furthermore, exam scores might be necessary for scholarship consideration and things like that. So even if you aren't if you're not considering it to be your student's top strength, like they're not really strong in it, you have nothing to lose by taking the ACTs or the SATs and studying for them, and only something to gain. What's the difference between test optional and test blind? So this is why it's really important for students to take a pre-college test whenever possible. So test optional means just that it is optional if a student sends in their scores. Test blind means that a school is not going to look at a score even if you send them to me. So all the University of California schools, they are all test blind. So even though they're very rigorous to get into and highly, highly selective, they won't even, if you have a 1600, which is the highest SAT, and a 36, the highest ACT, they don't care. They're not going to look at it. Okay, that's test blind. Test optional is, well, these scores are higher than their average. I want to share them. So I always say Naviance is such a great tool because you can see where other students with your test scores and your grades, if they've been accepted into a school or not. Things have changed a little since Naviance goes back 5 years, but because of the test optional component. So it is also a great idea to call your admissions rep, which is something that you'll get used to doing in your junior year. You'll become more familiar with that. And in your senior year, you'll be able to start, your student will be able to start going to many of the college visits that they come and they chat with students at Wooten. Should I submit my score if the college is test optional? And like I already mentioned, if the score is above average, the answer is yes. If it's right at the 50th percent mark or below, if it's at the bottom, the answer is no. If it's the mid mark, I always say to reach out to the school and ask them. They don't need to know who it is that's calling. So it's a really great option to do. I just said that. When should I start studying? So one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of students will sign up for test prep courses and assume that that is enough and that they will learn just from the test prep classes. And I tell students that they really should be building in 2 hours of studying per day as they're preparing for the ACTs and the SATs. So I have a timeline that I'm going to show you in a minute. And I always say that the best answer is 2 to 3 months before taking the test. But let's first talk about the difference between the SATs and the ACTs. So when it comes to college admissions, first of all, students can choose either test. It really doesn't matter. So they're going to be taken, and they're both equally and it doesn't matter. So so tests cover roughly the same material with some distinct differences. We're going to talk about science, reading, math, and English in a second. And then we're going to obviously talk about timing. So you can see from this chart here that so test prep companies like Appleroot, those are the people who submitted, who gave these stats to me. The material covered in both the ACTs and the SATs, they actually overlap 80%. So the material is very similar. Both cover reading comprehension, grammar, writing technique, and some math. But here's the differences. The ACT has a separate section for science literacy, where the SAT incorporates some science into its reading. When it comes into reading comprehension, the two tests are similar content, but the difficulty levels and timing differ. So SAT reading test is a marathon at 65 minutes. It's the longest section of any of the tests. And the passages tend to be longer and vary in difficulty. You'll see more passages that range from you'll see more passages in the ACTs, but they're shorter. And the passages also tend to be a little bit more modern in thinking, where the ones in the SATs, a lot of times they're historical in nature. So as far as math is concerned, the ACT has one math section where you can always have a calculator, but the SAT has two math sections, one no calculator and one calculator. It's still, some of the content is the same, like algebra, graph reading, arithmetic, and some geometry. However, the SAT focuses on algebra and modeling pretty heavily on geometry. And the SAT's math sections are filled with word problems, graphs and charts, and multi-problems, where the SAT's math section is more of a grab bag, and you'll see pretty much everything. So English and writing, the English section on the ACT and the writing on the SAT are the most similar of all the sections. Both give you several sets of passages, and you're asked to correct the grammar and improve the writing techniques of each passage. You're expected to see a wide range of grammar concepts like punctuation, adverb pronouns, prepositions on both tests. Okay, so the timing, the SATs and the ACTs have similar structure, but they're different in timing. Both tests are about the same length, 3 hours give and take, and have mandatory, 4 mandatory sections each, but they are a little bit different in timing. As you can see here, how much time each student uses per question for ACT versus SAT. So what about so how do you decide which test to do first? So I always encourage students to take a baseline SAT and ACT. I inevitably will have a student say, but I took the PSAT. Well, the PSAT isn't a complete SAT. And there are many companies, I know Appleroot does this, and Test Prep One-on-One and Everest, where you can take a free ACT or SAT baseline to see which one you do better. So if you compare your performances, then if you have a 70-point difference, then go with the one with the strength. If there is no difference and it really is negligible, then go with student preference. Okay, so and then if a student is not yielding the results that they want, then I suggest that they switch to the other one. And I always encourage to get some help, even a couple of sessions, if you've been studying one, and flip to another, so you know what to expect. So here's a little bit of a college admissions testing timeline for you to use. So you can see, you can see early summer after sophomore year. This is when you should start picking a test and setting your goal. Get ready for this. And midsummer before junior year, you want to really select the test dates that would work best. So if your student plays football or is in competitive dance or in the school play and it falls in the fall, then your student's probably going to want to take a spring test. The one thing that's really important is that you try not to hold off till your senior year. You're not going to get anymore from taking it your senior year, okay? So that's really important. But you do need to consider your students' math curriculum. So an ACT, SAT, you want to make sure that your student has at least gotten the majority of the way through Algebra 2 and obviously finished geometry and Algebra 1. And make sure that you plan your test prep, and at that time, you want to register for the exam dates and set up your student accommodations if they have any. So if a student has an IEP or a 504, it's really important that you get those in place so that they can use those on the college admissions test as well. And then, of course, take the official test. So juniors will ideally take their first test in the fall semester if they've completed Algebra 2. Otherwise, they should hold off until the spring. So let's talk about preparing early for college and why this is so important. So while I don't begin working with students until at the earliest freshman year, sometimes I wish I could go back and advise families about paying for college when their kids are still in diapers. I'm actually working with a family right now where they have a junior in high school and a 4- and 5-year-old. So I was like, oh my God, let me just tell you this before you do something. Because paying for college is a really important component about college planning. We all know that college is really expensive, and far too often families don't start really digging into the financial process and creating a realistic plan until it's too late. The family's shared costs were often much more than anticipated because they didn't do research prior to applying or researching schools. So while financial aid applications are not submitted until senior year of high school, there are important steps that families can do as early as 9th grade to minimize college costs. The earlier you find out if you're going to be eligible for need-based grant funding, the better off your plan. So in 9th grade, you can go ahead and start by running an expected family contribution, that's called an EFC calculation. These can be found pretty much on all college websites, and College Board has a great one as well. You can compare results at a few in-state public, out-of-state public, and private colleges. If the EFC or expected family contribution is less than the cost of attendance, another acronym, COA, your students may be eligible for need-based aid. And that's what's really important to know here. Put yourself in the best position to receive the most funding. Identify assets that could be repositioned before January of the student's junior year. And why that year? Because this is the baseline for their college freshman year financial aid application. So start tracking your cash flow that you think that you use now to support your student to determine how much you can give and how much other child rearing expenses will end, so that you can put that into preparing to pay for college. So students should begin a preliminary search for outside scholarships. And we're going to talk a little bit more about scholarships in one of the upcoming slides. So let's talk about 10th grade. So sometimes the net price calculator may seem hidden. So you might want to look for it specifically very, very carefully. So you want to research scholarships offered at interested colleges, and that's where you're going to find the net price calculators as well. And is your student on track to be competitive? And you want to make sure you finalize any asset repositioning before the end of the first semester, and have a family reality check. Do you have a realistic plan to pay for college? Families with more than one child, make sure that you have a financial plan for each and every student for all 4 or more years. All right, let's talk about 11th grade. 11th grade is where you want to identify most of your local and college scholarships. In January, I offer a free webinar about planning for college scholarships. So go ahead, and I'd love for you to follow me. I'll give you that information at the end so that you can sign up for that free webinar. Pinpoint colleges where your student may stand out academically compared to typical students. These are the schools that are most likely going to provide significant merit scholarships. One of the things that I didn't really talk about here that I want to talk about before we get into Q&A is visiting colleges. So I really encourage students to visit colleges across the board. So we're very lucky that we live in the DMV. We have colleges, small, medium, large, extra large, in rural college town settings, suburban settings, and urban settings. And even if your student doesn't want to go to a school that's nearby, if you go and visit these types of schools, they'll get a really good feel for what they're like. I visit about 30 colleges every year, and I have a YouTube channel. So you can, if you subscribe to YouTube, take a look at Custom College Consulting. I do these awesome college tours, and I'd love for you to follow me and take a look at some of the videos as they come out. But I see that I have a few questions, so I am going to open the floor up. So let me, so there's a question that I can't answer, but maybe, I don't know if Brian's still on or Mr. Nelson. I think the question is, does Wooten still offer the STAR program? I thought that they did. Oh yeah, you did answer that. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Thank you.
We sure do.
Thank you. I thought so. Okay, great. What is Naviance? So Naviance is just making sure, Mr. Nelson, you still have Naviance, right?
Yeah, we sure. I put an answer in there, but go ahead and speak to it. We do have Naviance. That remains our primary platform.
So Naviance is a platform that basically students can use as a tool for researching different colleges. And it also is a conduit for applying to colleges. So actually, in order to request letters of recommendation for teachers, which is another aspect that I didn't really have time to get into today, which is really cultivating teacher relationships. Because they're the ones who are going to write letters of recommendation on your students' behalf. Those recommendations come through Naviance. Naviance also pairs with Common App. And so a lot of the information that the students input throughout the years into Naviance will also, it works as a conduit for Common App. And if you don't know what Common App is, and it sounds like a foreign language to you, Common App is really the largest platform that students can use to apply to colleges. In fact, I would say now more than 80% of colleges in the country use Common App as a way to apply to college. And so students don't have to write the same answer to the same questions over and over again. It also has a student question that like a narrative that they discuss, a certain question that they answer about themselves. And that goes to all of the colleges who accept that essay. And then some colleges have college-specific questions. What is asset repositioning? Asset repositioning is putting your assets into, so first of all, like when you have a 401k, that is not taken into account when colleges are looking at, when they're taking into account your financial need. So if you're not using a 401k to the maximum, put as much money into your 401k as possible, because that is not part of the net price calculation. So that would be one example of that. A lot of it also depends on different family situations and things like that. And it's really like an individual process. And I'd be happy to talk with anybody about that process that has any questions. So does anyone else have any questions? I'm going to put on my last screen here. So as you can see, feel free to get in touch with me. My website is www.custom-college.com. Here's my phone number and my website address. I will talk a little bit about the controversial digital SAT versus paper, sure, in a second. And like I said, I can also be found on all social media platforms where you can find out about all my free webinars and things like that. So this is obviously a controversial thing. I don't know if everybody knows this, but the SATs are moving toward a digital format. So how it's supposed to work is that as a student takes the test, if they're answering all the questions correctly, then the test is progressively going, this is a theory, that they're going to get harder, and it will have an accurate, a more accurate glimpse of to what the student is going, their score is going to be in a shorter amount of time. So they will not have to take a 3-hour long test. If the student starts missing questions, then they're kind of going to get easier questions, and then their score will kind of be figured that way. I actually took the GREs that way, and it drove me a little crazy because I kept second guessing everything that I'm like, am I on the harder section, or am I not on the harder section? But I know that all of the companies that I work with that do test prep are really digging into finding out how the digital SAT versus the paper SAT is going to be implemented. It is not going to even start yet. So I don't know how old your student is yet, but it's not even going to start. They're just doing the beta test next year. So it's a couple years away. And so whatever I answer to it now, I can guarantee it will change by the time I talk to Wooten next year. So I don't want to give you too much wrong information because in case it changes. So I'm sorry that I can't give you more. So also I offer a complimentary consultation for anybody who would like to chat with me later. And I don't see any other questions. So if you do end up thinking of something later, go ahead and you see my email, go ahead and shoot me an email at your convenience, and I'd be happy to answer for you. So I'm going to stop my share now. And I want to thank again, Mr. Nelson and Brian for inviting me to chat with my Patriots. Go Patriots. I was so happy to hear about your football team this year. I was like, it was crazy. It was almost as exciting as the Commanders winning last night.
Well, thank you, Jody. Thank you so much. This was a great presentation. So would it be possible to get the slides that we can post up for everybody?
Absolutely. Sure. No problem. I'll send them over to you.
Okay, that would be great. Very helpful for everyone. I hope everyone's able to make it to our December 20th PTSA meeting, where we're going to have all of our alumni coming back, probably have 10 to 15. So I hope you can join us. It's always a great meeting, and we're looking forward to seeing all of our alums coming back. So hope everybody has a great evening, and look forward to seeing you on December 20th. And thank you, Jody. Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Nice to meet you, Jody. Thanks.
Thank you, you too. Take care.
Take care.